Hello, and welcome to episode number 32. This light is really bright. I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit. So, what you can learn when you choose something uncomfortable. I've been offline for a little while. I haven't done that much, so sorry for not being around. But this episode really what I've learned and what I've gained is just the awareness of when we actually are willing to choose to be uncomfortable. I'm still really washed out. Okay, let's try that. When we're willing to choose to be uncomfortable, how much we can learn from that. And I certainly chose something to be selling lottery tickets at a fair, which is something way beyond anything I've ever chosen. And it's a beyond for me because I don't really do sales. Sales is not something that I've ever chosen. And also doing it in a way, choosing it in a way that it create something different. Like for me, it was just something really uncomfortable. And so for other people, it isn't. I mean, that's what some people do. That's their normal job. It's just not something that I would normally choose. So it's really interesting. And what I gained from it was amazing. Like I learned so many things. Also, like selling to people that maybe aren't interested, and just all the points of views people have about whatever it is that you're selling. And so it's also playing with that. It's playing and being aware of all the judgments people have about things. And so it's really interesting. Like I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and I learned so much by doing it. And it was a really, really neat experience. And so what if you could use or look at what makes you uncomfortable in your life and actually choose it? What would that create? Would that move you out of the place that you're currently in? And so it's like really playing with these different places, and it's kind of fun to just become aware of where people are functioning from. And so, sorry, I'm getting notifications as I'm getting this. Sorry. All good. And so it's really, it is really neat to see that. And it made me become more aware of where people function from. And one of the things that I actually noticed that came up a lot is, so two things were really actually quite neat. One is how much people make their world really small. And then the other thing was piggybacking on the small bit, making yourself small, was when you would approach people and they know that you were that I was selling something and they weren't interested, and they would automatically shrink, go away, or completely ignore you, which I thought was funny. It actually made me laugh a few times. And instead of, so the ignoring part was really interesting because, so going into ignoring me, instead of just acknowledging hey, yeah, I see that you have something and I'm not really interested, instead of just saying that and just being open, yeah, sorry, great, and I'm not interested, they would literally you're not there, I can't see you, so you don't exist. And so, and how many people do that? So how often do we ignore the things in our lives that we simply don't want to address, or we ignore things in our lives that we don't want to be aware of? That it's you kind of shut the door and it doesn't actually exist in your world, which is not true. It exists. You just choose to ignore it. And so what would that, looking at that and becoming aware of that and looking at all the places that you shut the door on things and pretend that they don't exist when they really do. And so that was really fascinating to me. And then the other thing was to be aware of the energy of the pushing and the pulling when you're looking to bring people in your world. And this doesn't just go into selling for yourself. It goes into pulling or pushing people into your world for, it can be all kinds of things. Like if you're looking for somebody in your business to fill a certain position, you can use the same thing with this pushing and pulling thing, and really playing more with the pulling, but pulling people from behind them. So it's almost like you're pushing them to you. So I was playing with that. And then it's also like how much in an environment that can be very noisy, how loud do you have to be just to get noticed? And so that's something that I didn't like doing at all. I don't like being loud in the normal sense of the way. And sometimes that's just required just so people know that you're there. And it's not always required. It's definitely not always required, but it was just interesting to see. And then it was interesting to see how different people approach it in a different way. And I was watching this one guy sell, and he constantly beat his targets. And so I looked at him, and he was an invitation. Then he'd go into his spiel, and at some point he wouldn't be an invitation, he wouldn't be a pull, he'd be a push. But it was only for very short periods of time. And for him, this worked really well. And so it was really interesting to see how different people approached it and just how they be, what that created. And so it was, it was really a fascinating experience. And again, like I learned a whole incredible amount of things by choosing that choice, which wasn't comfortable in the beginning for sure. And there was definitely times along the way that, there were long days, so I was tired and you're like, I'm done. I just want to be done with this. And then days where I thought things weren't really happening. And then in the end, things actually ended up being pretty good when you just looked at the numbers. And then there was days where the numbers didn't look very good, but I had a good day and it was fun. And I really enjoyed the interaction and so on with people. So, we have all those, that shows up in our life on a daily basis. And so playing, being aware of that. And so the other really interesting thing, and I probably cannot express this enough, is how much using the tools created ease in this choice. And there would be times where things would be really slow, or I just did a bunch of sales and things were really good. And I would use two tools constantly. And those two tools were, what else is possible and how does it get any better than this? And when it was dead and nothing was going on and the energy was flat, I would say that non-stop until something changed. I literally would go into, how does it get any better than this? 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 What else is possible? How does it get any better than this? And I would keep on going until something shifted, or people would arrive and then, you're interacting with them. I use that constantly, every single day. And so how infrequent do we actually use the basic tools that you can use that can change things and be in the question of like, I wonder what can change here. What else can be different? The energy is totally flat. I'm bored. What can I do different? What else can I choose to create something different here? And constantly be in the question and choose something else. And that definitely created more. And it was really interesting to be aware of when things may be uncomfortable or things don't seem to be going in a way that is actually possible, and then just asking some questions. And even if it is the same question over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so that's something that was really fun to play with, and that I will definitely implement that more in my daily life, which I haven't been as much. And how, what are we actually capable of that we've never acknowledged? So it turns out that I'm not a terrible salesperson, which I thought I was. Was I at the top? Yeah, a day or two, sure. Every day, no. Was I above average? Yeah, I was. For the most part. Did I have bad days? Absolutely, I had terrible days. Both in numbers and both in just like, oh my God, I'm spent, I'm tired. And I did use the tools. I also use the tools in other ways to create ease for my body too. And that's something often people don't use, is the tools to create more ease in your body and make it easier for your body and give your body energy. And I definitely did use those on a regular basis as well. So it's so interesting how when you look at your life and you talk about the implementation of change in your world, how do you do that? Well, this is how you do it. I'm talking about an example of an experience I just had in my daily life in choosing something uncomfortable and used the tools non-stop. And it changed things and it made things easier, and it gave me awarenesses that I may have not been able to be aware of had I not been asking. And it did create more ease in my world. And for the most part, and it was really amazing to see, like towards the end, yeah, I was tired, but I wasn't. I actually had a lot of energy. Did I sleep? Yeah, I slept a lot, as much as I possibly could. And yet, when I was on. And it just created something greater. And it made me realize that, those things that you resist, those things that you think are going to be too uncomfortable for you to choose, because you have these points of views and these judgments of yourself that you may not be able to be those things, or to be, say, good at those things, or you think you're going to be terrible, so you don't want to choose them. And then you find out you're not terrible. And you find out that you're like half decent, actually. And then when you look at, and then for me as well, after the whole thing was done, I still constantly go back and I look at different situations of like, what could I have done different there? And how can I apply what I learned there to other parts of my life? And so even though that I'm no longer doing that work, I'm still learning from it, and I'm actually gaining awareness from it. And so it is really fascinating to see when you do choose something that is uncomfortable to you, and again, it may only be uncomfortable to you. It may not be uncomfortable to anyone else. But when you continue choosing things that are uncomfortable to you, what else can show up? And how much actually fun can it be then? And how much awareness can you gain, and how much can you learn from making those choices? And what was also interesting for me was how in what you end up becoming aware of, and all the acknowledgement of you and what works for you. And it was interesting because afterwards, I came back and had a day off, and then had a meeting, and suddenly things changed. I had a totally different perspective on something. And the one thing that also that I got out of this is I was willing to be me, and while I was doing it, I was willing to be judged, and I really didn't care what people thought. And I'm also aware of, like, what else can I learn from this, and what else can I gain from this, and what else is possible with this all. And so playing with all these possibilities and realizing, I was decent, and how much better can I be at it? What else can I do to be better? And what else can I use with what I know? And I look at different situations, and how could I approach those different to create a different result? And so there's constantly questions. There's more questions in my world now by going through this, and looking how I can add those to other parts of my life, and then acknowledge, for me, like, the acknowledgement, I'm so grateful, and how much this has contributed to me. And it actually has opened up so many more possibilities. And I also looked at so many different things which I know are possible, which maybe in the past I ignored. Probably it was one of those doors, like, you're not there. And playing with this all, like, it was a play, and looking how we can all contribute to each other, and how that contributing to each other, how that creates more. And that's something, also another thing I became aware of, like, in the way of what we can choose to be with each other, to support each other, to contribute to each other, to make each and every one in your life greater. That is something that I see that we can all do more of that. And so the other thing that this choice created for me was that I can choose way more than I've ever chosen before, or that I've even looked at choosing, and that I realize that there is so much more possible. And with what else is possible with what we're choosing in our lives right now, and really look at how far beyond can we go that we have never even looked at. And so those are the other things that I got. I mean, it was amazing. Like, I really gained so much insight into this, into what really truly is possible, and in how much we are limiting ourselves, and how much how many places we are using to stop ourselves. And then seeing that in people that I interacted with, like, how much we use the excuse of others to stop ourselves. So one example, and this is something I was looking at, this one guy, he was I was in a lineup, I was selling tickets, and he's like, "I'm not buying tickets from you. You're unlucky." And so it was a total projection. But what was interesting, he was using me as the source of his luck. And if I wasn't lucky, he couldn't buy tickets off me. Instead of looking at what if I didn't actually matter? Whether he thought I was lucky or not, what if that didn't actually matter at all? What if what mattered more is that he believed that no matter who he bought the tickets off, he could create whatever he wanted in his world. Instead, he made me wrong, therefore he couldn't choose this. He actually made me more significant in his world than he made himself. And that was a really interesting one for me to look at, because there was also a ton of projections at me at that moment in time. And they weren't all warm and fuzzy either. And it didn't, like, I was aware of it and it didn't affect me negatively, and I just moved on. I would have approached it in a different way, and I would have actually played with it more. And it's also, what's really fun is when people have these reactions, to play with them. And the other thing is, with playing with people, it was amazing how few people had thought beyond anything. Like, well, not even beyond, it was astounding how many people had these fixed points of views. And because of those fixed points of views, and one of those was, I was selling a lottery for a house, for winning a house and cars and blah, 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 whatever. And so one of the positions I had was to go in the lineup to go see the house. They had it on site. And I would, engage people. Hey, you interested? You got tickets? You're interested in buying, whatever. And they would say, no, I have to see the house first. And so then I would say to them, well, you don't actually have to like the house. When you win it, you just sell it. And almost no one had thought of that. And that blew me away. Like, they had this point of view that they had to like the house in order to buy the tickets, because if they won it, they'd have to like it to live in it. And I'm like, you don't have to like it, you can just sell it. And that never entered their world. Almost every single person I made that comment to never had even considered it, which was a lot. Like a lot. And it was crazy. And that blew me away. It's like and it was just a really good example of, we have these points of views, and because we have those points of views, we literally cannot see beyond them. Even just if it is for a little bit, we just can't see that far. And it was really shocking to me on how many people had these particular points of views, and because of that, literally could not see anything else. And so it was really, it was a great example of how we become aware, like a great example, life example of, like, your points of views limit you completely. And going beyond them isn't actually that difficult. It's just looking at different possibilities. And when you start looking at those different possibilities, you then also realize how limiting your particular points of views are to you, and how they don't allow you to choose way, way greater. And we couldn't choose way greater if we don't have so many points of views that limit us completely. And so that was another really interesting thing that I became aware of and realized, and which made this whole experience so really, truly amazing. And I am so grateful for it, and I'm now looking at, like, what else can I choose? What else can I choose that makes me uncomfortable? And how can I add this to my life? So what can you learn from choosing something uncomfortable? and what can show up, and actually how much fun can it be, and how much can you acknowledge that you are actually capable of way more than you ever give yourself credit for. And so on that note, thank you so much for joining me. Please leave some comments on what you've chosen that has made you uncomfortable, or what you are not choosing that makes you uncomfortable, that's preventing you from going further. I am really fascinated to hear, or to hear from people, like where you stop yourselves and where you have gone beyond and chosen something uncomfortable, which has created something different in your world. And what are the things that you could choose that are uncomfortable? So please let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon, and have a great week. Bye.